Hello everyone, welcome to the channel. Today we are going to talk about Amazon Recovery Controller, ARC, and we'll talk about how ARC works, and we'll do a demo of a serverless application. We'll try to switch a traffic from one region to another region. However, ARC can be implemented within our region just for different availability zones. There is a failure in one AZ, you can switch traffic to another AZ. Our focus in this tutorial or in this video is going to be for the regional disaster recovery. We'll talk about what use cases ARC works best and what are still the manual challenges you might be having while using the ARC. So without further ado, let's deep dive in. So as part of ARC, we'll be looking into this document, and we'll be looking into some serverless code, which I will walk you through how it is working, and then eventually we'll try to switch over traffic from one region to another region by using ARC controller. So as you see here, Amazon Recovery Controller basically works on journal shift, as you can see, and can also do a journal auto shift, which is what we are not going to look into that, but we are looking into multi-region recovery. So think about it, you have your application deployed in US East 1 or in one of the region, but it's not running active in secondary region. It's running sort of active passive, or you can think about your application which is running on premises, but you have a disaster recovery setup in cloud. One thing which I didn't like very much with in the readiness check, what it provides, if you're using readiness checks, basically you have to make sure that if you have 5 EC2 instances in US East 1, you will be running the same sort of instances in US West 2 as well. If you would like to automate things, if you do not want to automate, you still have to come to AWS console and you have to switch. At that point, what I think it kind of works some sort of like levers. So you have a lever which you can place somewhere, a shell script or something like that, and you are basically, all you're doing is you are switching from failover Route 53 record from primary to secondary, something like that. So that's what basically one of the thing which I'm not very much fan of ARC, but let's look into that and let's see if we find some details about it. So right in this, I have a code repository which I have actually earlier I have opened in the code spaces. So here you can see the code space, and I have deployed this application using CDK, which is basically a serverless application. So there is an API gateway which is backed by Lambda function. So the message goes to SQS queue, and SQS invokes secondary Lambda function, which gets placed by Lambda function to Aurora database. So as part of Aurora stack, I'm creating a global cluster in US East 1 and US West 2. US East 1 is a primary here. I have some common variables which I'm passing, and I have SQS Lambda, which I'm creating the main queue and the DL queue. Pretty simple in terms of application. As you can see in AWS console, it has created an application stack in US West 2, and it has created a similar application stack in US East 1. There are the resources which it has created. I was already having a VPC, so it created API, it created DynamoDB credentials, which is basically being used with the Lambda function. It's created a few of the security group. It created the main queue and the DL queue, an S3 bucket to auto delete some of the objects which are no longer needed. It created 3 Lambda functions, subnet group, and all sort of things. So what we will do, we'll look into ARC, what it provides, and for the benefit here, what I was working, I was creating here some readiness check and resource group. So I created a resource group. Let me show you how actually you have to create. So you can click on create and you can pass on a resource group or a recovery group here, and then you can create a cell. So as an example, I created two cells. One is US East 1 and another one I created for US West 2, and I clicked on create resource group, so you can see there are two cells here. And the next thing, I created a resource set. So I created a resource set for SQS, for RDS. I created resource set for individual Lambda functions. The reason I created for individual Lambda functions, my Lambda functions has different sort of configurations. Some has different CPU and the memory configuration. Some are actually in private subnet. Some are actually, because I am not using the VPC endpoint, so the one which is deleting the S3 objects is actually in public. So if your Lambda functions are in sort of different in terms of configuration, you should be creating a different resource groups as well. So let's create one more. I have not yet created, so I'm going to create one for API gateway. So let's create one for API gateway. I'm choosing API gateway stage 1 and we'll add ARN for the API gateway. So let's go to API gateway here and let's find out our ARN here. There is a document which you can see to find the ARN. So this is the one which we are going to look. So I will use my stage name as prod. So this is for my US West 2. I will do the same kind of thing for my US East 1. So here my US East 1 and my API ID will be different. So let me go and find my API ID for US East 1. So which is right over here. And use this API ID, create a resource group, and so ARN AWS. Actually, it's going to be, I think we missed a thing. So it's going to be API gateway reason. So this is created. The next thing is I will go back to the readiness check and I will create a readiness check here. So I will come back and click on readiness check and I will do API. My type is API gateway, and the next is I will associate with my recovery group. US East 2 it is, US West 2 it is, and US East 1. So now in couple seconds this should be ready. So all it is saying, all of these readiness checks are basically the resources in US East 1 and US West 2 are healthy. You can see here this one is in our US West 2 shell, it's ready, and this one is also ready. So means there is no misconfiguration in between those resources. As an example, like API gateway is ready in between US East 1 and US West 2 as well. So let's create a cluster. I'm just creating Arc demo cluster here. I will say that I understand, and as I created the cluster, it's going to take a couple minutes to be ready. All right, so our routing controller is now ready. It's deployed. So what next we will do here is we'll go inside a routing controller and we'll add a routing control. So we'll give controller US East 1 and create control policies. So now both of these are pretty much ready. One is deployed, one is pending. So let's wait for both of those to be deployed, and they are ready right now. So right now the state is actually off. So what we will do is we'll change the state to be on here. So we'll make those active and we'll make other one also active. And the next thing what we are going to do is we are going to click on this. So my cluster my routing control. Just going to click on one of those and generate a health check ID. So I'm just going to create a health check ID, and this is my West, so I'm just going to give US West to health check. I'll leave it default, and I will do the same thing for the other one as well, which is my US East 1. So I will just say US East 1 health check, and I will create this. Okay, so next is I will keep this health check ID and I will go to my domain. So I have this application custom domain which I have created, and as you can see right now, the GET request is basically what you see. You are in US East 1, and similarly if you go to US West 2, you will get a message US West 2. So what I'm going to update is I'm going to update this record, and I'm just going to add the health check ID. So the health check ID, which is my US East 1, is what I'm going to associate with the primary, and another one, which is US West 2, I'm going to associate with my secondary, which is now associated. So both are associated now. So let's try to switch over the traffic and let's see what will happen. So what I will do is change routing state, and I will actually come here and change the controlling state and change this to false right now, and I will just confirm this. So now basically behind the scene what's happening is Route 53 is detecting that health check is fail, which you can also see under here, the health checks, and you will notice that this will take some time. Okay, as you can see, I have turned off the US East 1 and my health check actually went unhealthy. I tried for both of those and now they are showing healthy, but they will be turning off as well, which I would like to highlight here. In terms of what we have created, the readiness check, those can be helpful to make us a wise decision before we have to turn on and off the data center. So you can come here and look by cell as an example. So you can look under your US West 2 and you can find your resources are healthy or not, or if there is any drift in case. And here you can see your SQS queues, RDS, Lambda, and everything else, and you can see the status. Let's suppose if you go and if you change your RDS from serverless to something else, so basically you delete your secondary replica, then there is no point of doing a failover, right? So it kind of help you to make a decision, although they are not basically doing anything automated. You can use the CLI to invoke a command as an example. So you can see there is a CLI here. You can just copy and put in some of your automation script or something if you would like to. So as a conclusion of this video, it is pretty much working on a layer of Route 53, although it has been recently separated out from Route 53, but it's pretty much still a part of. The checks are useful for you to have a quick review of your resources, although they are not making any self decision to switch over to a failure region or a failover region or not. So you still have to make your own decisions based on your synthetic checks or your application checks basically. Thanks a lot for watching. I hope I will see you in the next session. Thank you.